Last year, at the beginning of what turned out to be a really hard year for me, my last grandparent died. And it wasn't until after all of the cards and the flowers and the condolences and the memorial service that I even started to feel her loss. I had to go through time without her. Holidays started to happen. My birthday started to happen. All of these things that she had been with me through, I was now without her for the first time. But that was months after she had died. And so I started to think, hey, wouldn't it be really great if all of those cards and the flowers and the sympathy and the condolences could have been spread out a little bit, so that while I'm now just beginning to feel her loss months after her death, that kind of support would still be around. And that gave me the idea for what I'm calling the grieving card company, because grief doesn't have a timeline. So it combines this wish for the acknowledgement of loss to be a little more spread out, with the fact that we are all very busy people who have about 1,000 things going on at once, and things just aren't slowing down, even as we move into the virtual realm for a bit here. So what the grieving card company is, it's still just an idea, but what it does is it supports people who know someone who's experiencing a loss. It could be the death of a loved one, but it could also be a job loss. It could be you have to move. It could be the end of a friendship. It could be a change of any kind, even if it's positive. I think a lot of people experience change as loss. So we all know that grief lasts longer than the moment that the thing happens. But you, as the loved one or the friend, you can't always be there in real time. So the idea is to have this website where you can sign up to send physical cards that go through the mail to the person you know who's experiencing the loss. And there would be, you could pick different styles. These are some of the ones that I've come up with, sort of depending on the personality of the person you're sending them to. So if that person is religious or more serious or has a funny side, you can kind of pick based on what you think they would like. I'm working with 2 artists for designs. Or if you don't see an option that fits your person, you could pick the custom option where you could work directly with one of the artists. So for example, you may have picked up that purple would be a thing that I would appreciate in a card. So that would be a custom option. And each of these choices, this isn't a final list, these are just examples, but they could be with or without text. I'm not an artist, but I am a writer. So I can write text for any of these particular themes. And then you could also pick the timeline that you would want each of these cards to be sent out at. I picked 12 because that was the number of months in a year. So you could have once a month for 12 months, or you could have once every other week for 6 months. Whatever custom timeline you think would be, fitting for the situation. You could also purchase the set of the cards, the 12 cards at once, and then so that you could send them out. You could add personal touches before you send them out, or you could, after you purchase them, you could sign up for reminders from the grieving card company to say, oh, hey, it's time for you to send out that card again. Just because we all mean well and things get missed. And then I thought, as this develops, there could be other kind of fun things to add on. I accidentally created a grief journal as I was going through the loss of my last grandparent and then the subsequent other things that happened that year for me. And I accidentally created this sort of it's just this kind of structured journal that gives you prompts that kind of help you, I wouldn't say work through grief, because I don't know that it'll ever least for me, I don't know that the missing my grandmother will ever really go away. I know that because my grandfather died 11 years ago, and I definitely still miss him, but more like, how do we now accommodate that in our lives as a part of our lives going forward? And I shared those prompts with a friend who then lost her grandmother after mine died. And that could be something that gets produced, and that could also be customized. As I mentioned, I'm a writer, I'm a poet, I am a social worker in training. I've worked at a crisis center, so I have led groups and trauma processing workshops. So that could also be something that gets incorporated into this at a later date. And then maybe a subscription-based membership as a support group once I am actually licensed as a social worker, clinical social worker, which is my goal, to provide that as part of this platform. So those are just some brainstorming ideas I had as I've been kind of kicking this idea around for about the last 2 years. And I've been talking about it with some friends, and they were the ones that have given me some of these ideas. So it's still very much in the idea phase. I did purchase the URL, grievingcardcompany.com. But I'm not super technical, so that's kind of why this is still at the idea phase. And then still finding artists to contract with, making those, I have a legal background as well, so writing up those contracts and getting those ideas out for the types of, as I talked about, the types of styles of cards to choose from, and then what the availability of the artists would be in terms of custom design. So that is the Grieving Card Company in a nutshell, and going the wrong direction. There we go. And it's something that I do hope to do. But just like grief doesn't have a timeline, neither does this.
Yay! Congrats, Megan. Great job.
Thank you.
And we've already got a question from Sarah.
Hello. So I just wanted to start off by saying I think this is a really thoughtful idea for a business. I think it's, really important. You're right, grief doesn't have a timeline. I think everyone's experienced that. One thing that really jumped out at me was that you've mentioned a couple of times this is very much in the idea stage, but then you also talked about, working with artists and writing contracts. And the thing that I didn't hear was carrying out some validation of your idea. So I wondered if you have any plans to do that. And what I'm talking about is the sort of thing where maybe you take your lovely new URL and you use a tool like Instapage to make a landing page. You throw a few Facebook ads there linked to the landing page and just see if you can collect some email addresses and see if people are interested in it. Or maybe just do a survey, something like that. Talk to some customers is what I'm saying, like people you don't know.
Yes, thank you for that. I did, I have not done that intentionally. I did that accidentally when I was just talking about it in another entrepreneur group, sort of. And I was more just like, does this idea even make sense? Is this even a viable idea? What do people even think? And I didn't realize that there were hospice workers in the group, and they said, "Oh gosh, my family members would love this." And a couple of other people had chimed in and said, "You really could take this to, like hospitals near you, like UW or other places like that." So it's not exactly what you were saying, but there was excitement within the community of people who work with those who are grieving, or who will be soon. And so, but it's not like it was not an official test, validation, or market research, but that's a really good idea.
My suggestion would be two things. And I say this genuinely as someone who has been working full on a business for the last 18 months that I'm about to, launch product. So two things that jump out. First of all, absolutely, the more data you can get on your customer validation. You need that combination. What you're describing there is very qualitative information, which is phenomenal. But you also need the quantitative to back it up. And there's all sorts of reasons for that, whether you're going for investment or not. But the number one benefit I found from doing that exercise is that when you're like, if you actually seriously go into doing it and you're knocking yourself out and you're having a really crappy day, being able to look at your numbers and see that there is a shed load of people who really are into what you're doing is actually completely moving. And then the second thing is, I think it's really important to do that exercise because it helps you define who your customer is.
Yeah.
So you probably have a really wide range of people who would love this. I've even thought of someone who could, I will contact you after, who may be interested in, maybe useful for you to talk to about partnering. But well, I'll explain what she is later. I won't do it now. But my point is, you know, you could go through the direct to hospital type medical route, but you could also go direct to your consumers, like people like me. So, but you know, knowing who you're talking to is critical. So that's what can come out of those exercises when you get the opinion from like 50, 100 people, you know.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Anyway, I thought it was great. I just wanted to throw all that in.
Yeah.
Great
Thank
questions. You. Market research, knowing your target customer, that's really key for all of us. Tessa.
Oh, I'm already off. Thank you for sharing. And it's a really interesting idea. I'm coming from a perspective of never having lost a single person in my life. So directly. So it's like, yeah, it's like a very interesting idea for me. And I've got like thoughts about like, how do you keep it genuine and meaningful, since grieving is so personal, and I don't know about that. But I guess being on the side of someone who hasn't grieved, I don't understand it, so I don't know what that would look like. And I'm like, oh, how would I like send a card feeling like I was getting, you know, giving them what they need? And I guess that took me to the question of the artists and like how you're going to work with them. So is the idea that you work with various artists that like continue to put new designs into each of those lines that you talked about, and then obviously you work with them on what they can do custom? But is it like kind of this idea of getting like kind of an ongoing stream of work from them, or is it like going to be, you know, 5 choices of the serious, 5 of the humorous? I kind of just want to know as a consumer what I would be looking at and what like how I'd be picking and choosing, you know. That makes sense.
Yes, and that's a very good question, how to keep it personalized. That was one of the objection is a strong word, but one of the questions is, well, if you're essentially outsourcing these cards to a company, how is the recipient going to feel like it's a personal gift from you? And so I have not totally thought through all of that yet, but the 2 ideas that came through when I was wrestling with that were, one was the customized option, where you could say, hey, I really want to have, you know, this is who my person is, this is who I want. And so they could work directly with the artist. And then the other one was that they could purchasing the set of cards so that like they could sign it when it goes out, or they could write a text. Or the other thing that I forgot to say, but is also part of this, is if they don't want to send the cards themselves, but they still want to personalize it, they could sign up for, you know, an email saying, hey, it's about time to send your card out. What would you like the text to say this month? But in terms of your question about working with artists, my initial idea was to have kind of a few sort of static options where it was like, here's the one artist I'm working with does beautiful watercolors of flowers and nature scenes. And so that would be in more of the, like, you know, the more serious, like the with sympathy cards that you see in like grocery stores and such, drugstores. And that would be kind of a more of a static theme. There could be sort of a like partial customized option where it's like, ooh, I like this, but I would like it in these colors, or something like that. So, but to have, there's one artist who wants to license her work. So it would be, she provides 12 images and then would get a percentage of the profits, which is one of the things that I'm still figuring out. every time somebody wants that line or that theme. And then there's another artist who is like, yeah, I'd like to maybe provide like blueprints for something, but then maybe have that like a hybrid customized, here's some like a coloring book thing. Here's the designs. What colors would you like? And then there's the full on customized, you tell me what you want and we work together to kind of create it. So I don't think it totally overcomes the objection of how is this personal, but it was also pointed out to me that just receiving something in the mail is a lot more personal than even an email. Yeah. So that, but it's a really good point.
And I don't think that they wouldn't be, because like, think about it, we buy for those cards, like we buy one from a grocery store, like how personalized is that,
right.
really?
Totally.
So like, not to say that it wouldn't be, I'm just like interested in like how like you're feeling and dealing with that kind of question, because I can see that coming up. But
totally.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I feel like you, with the artists, like I think you'd find that there are artists out there who are willing to do like I'll just tell you this, like I met somebody who is creates cards, and I love them. She's young and like very nervous about it. She's just trying to find ways to put her art out there, but I think her art is just for her cards is just like very, I don't know, I'll send you an example of it, but it's more, I just want to tell you the example because there are people out there, artists who want to just like create a piece of art to be put on a card, and they may just be interested in, instead of it being like a licensing or ongoing intense contract, they may not be the ones that will be doing custom work for you, or they might be, you just like email them when it comes up and it's not like I need to give you this quota. But that I think that like there are people out there who would be willing to just kind of like give you artwork that you can put in your line and keep just like boom, boom. Every time you sell one, they get a little bit, and it's not like super intense relationship. But anyway, that's really awesome, and I like the idea a lot.
So just if you're going to send Megan any resources, I would just encourage you to send it to everybody, because then we'll get a printout of the chat results. That's part of how Zoom works. If it's sent to everyone, so then we can make sure that Megan gets the feedback. But really great questions. Megan, a couple questions came in via chat. One from Leif, asking more on the kind of logistics side of like, what do you think the platform will be for physically making and sending the cards? His options are like, would you print it on demand or would you outsource it?
Yes. So that is one thing that I've wrestled with, like inventory. Do I have space? Would it be, so currently my thinking is it would be on print on demand. I have a friend who is she runs an Etsy shop, and she's like a screen printer, and she's done all of this work on like fair trade paper sourcing and making sure it's all environmentally friendly and isn't, destroying monkeys' habitats and the rainforests in places, because that's important to me as well. And so I really want to be able to support like small and either local or like those like fair trade coffee. That became a really big thing about 10 years ago, and now it's all about having like those environmentally friendly small farmers around the world who actually create a wonderful product but can't get what they put into it. And so I'm wanting at some point to, that's what I want. I want like recycled, earth friendly stuff. My friend has already done all of that research. So at this point I'm thinking it would probably be on demand as they get ordered. But obviously if this were to ever, take off, I don't know that is necessarily the thing that's best for scale. And so having some sort of inventory would probably be a good idea. And I wonder if that would be like, maybe I just, have a little, there's like these artist spaces all over Seattle that I have that, and that becomes maybe more my studio or whatever. But yeah, that is a sticky wicket, as they say, in terms of inventory and all of that kind of thing too.
Well,
but yeah,
and keep in mind that like you don't have to have answers to all these questions. That's one of the wonderful things about William and Cups is that some of this might just spark a little bit of an idea of like, oh right, yep, I want to make sure I think about that. Zaki, you had your hand up.
Hi Megan, that was great. Thanks so much for sharing that story. As you were talking about this, one of the things that popped into my mind was, especially with the questions was, when you talk to an artist in the music industry, some people will say, do you write the words first or do you write the music first? And so my question is, how are you planning to do that? And no matter which way you choose, the one thing I can tell you from a couple of friends of mine who are professional songwriters, they say that they write something every single day, and that 95 out of 100 are just total crap. 5 of them have the potential to be okay, and they hope that they can get one of those 5 to morph into something useful at some point. So that's my suggestion for you, but I'm just wondering, how do you see this? You see people creating the art, then you writing the words for it, or do you create the words? These are for the static cards, not for the ones that are custom made.
Yeah, thank you for your question. I have worked with, so I'm a poet. I do write something every day. I throw out most of what I write. So that creative process is very familiar to me. I've also written a novel 9 times, and only the one draft is going to make it. So I have worked with artists way before this, in more informal settings. Like, we want to create, a Christmas card, or we want to create a happy birthday card for someone. And what I found is that it really depends. It doesn't just depend on the artist. It actually also depends on the project. I've done both. So sometimes the artist will ask me for the words and then create based on what I've provided them. Sometimes the artist is like, I have this vision, I want to put it out there, and then I will create words that go along with that. So I think it depends on, in this case for the static cards, it would depend on what the artist wants. One artist I've already talked to, she's like, I already have my process, I already have my way of creating, so I would then create the words after I got the images, because I'm flexible and I can do both. I have done both. And so it sort of depends on, if we were to do a custom project where somebody wanted words and art, I would work with the artist about how that would go. So again, this probably isn't a great scalable thing, but for now, in terms of each order, each person, each artist even, it would be kind of on a project by project or line by line, like style by style basis is kind of what I'm thinking.
That's very cool. So I kind of see it as being you're open to 2 different workflows.
Yes.
That's awesome.
I've done both. I love doing both. It's a different approach. It's a different challenge each time, whether starting from scratch or having to create based on something that I already have. But I've done both, and I know folks who really need to work the one way, like, oh, I need the words first, or I can't have the words first. So
cool. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for your question.
Nice. Jolene, you're up.
Hi. So I one great presentation, totally dig that. I love the fact that you talked about how grief and loss is not just about people. I mean, obviously pets are also a huge thing that people grieve for a long time. But I also think that your mention of people losing their job, I think so we are in this culture, we're so identified with what we do. Yeah. And I remember I lost my job after 3 years of working for a company that was a small startup. So I really felt like I was part of that company, and then they laid off. And I remember there was a professor of, I think, communication or organizational development I was on a plane with, and she's like, oh, you're grieving. And it was like, what? Mm-hmm. I'm like, and I was still so young that I didn't realize, but yeah, it was exactly that. And I think, so many people experienced that with the pandemic. And I think that you've hit upon something that, there are so many different types of grief and so many different types of loss. And that I think that the fact that you're recognizing that it is a broad and you can supply this to lots of different markets, I think is awesome. So kudos.
Thank you.
Nice. I actually want to piggyback on that question because I was curious, do you think you would have like a very different product if that was the kind of loss? like where it would be clear, like you would select like, oh, I've lost a person versus I've lost a pet versus a job versus a breakup? Or have you thought about that at all?
I actually had thought very briefly about it when I was trying to brainstorm, well, what would the options be of the static cards? And then I thought, I mean, even if it was serious person who lost a job versus serious person who lost their grandmother still would be different, I think. I mean, for me, I experienced all the losses in 2019. So all of them. And even though some of them were not temporary, some of them were, but so I was like, oh, what kind of card would I want for this? Like, it would be like what I want. The card I would want to receive for my grandmother's death is real different than the one that I wanted to receive when I was in the hospital with appendicitis, having just undergone surgery to save my life. So, because it completely ruptured. So both are related to death in some way, but they're really different. And so I was like, okay, yeah, maybe the first step in the whatever website I design, in the tree of that, you select, my person just lost their beloved cat. My person just lost their job. My person just lost a friendship. That's a thing I don't think we have a lot of room for in this culture at all, is the ending of friendship. And so having those, and then it takes you to different options based on what you select. Or you could have just the generic person, going through. I don't want to select one of those because I want it to be more general. But yes, that it's I haven't put a lot of thought into it, but I have realized, these categories don't quite capture the nuances of the different kinds of loss quite yet.
Yeah. Another piece of feedback that came in via text was noting that, it'd be great for a consumer to be able to see like mock-ups or examples of the types of cards and be able to see text examples. And I think that speaks to kind of Tessa's question from before too.
Totally.
Casey, you had a question.
Hi, thanks. Question. So one thing I thought is, have you thought about branching a little bit and going in a different direction as far as what I would see as low-hanging fruit was like birthday cards? I think it'd be cool if I could like have a birthday card sent to somebody every year, because I'm starting to get lots of nieces and nephews and stuff. And I always liked it when I would get cards in the mail from my uncle. And maybe that's kind of like a regular repeating thing, that it would be cool if I could set that up. I mean, I don't want to, I'm doing other things and I want to express to them that I care about them, but I don't seem to find the time at the right time. I'll like, oh, their birthday was yesterday, I can't send anything. I can give them a phone call real quick and say, hey, but I think it might be an idea. I don't know. Have you thought about that at all?
I hadn't, but that could be one of those, here's an additional service kind of thing, that like, this is a thing is always going to happen. And I know a lot of people, it's actually the same issue that you're having, is I'm starting to lose track of all of these nieces, nephews, all the things. I want to be a good aunt or uncle, and it's just a bit too much. So that's a really good idea. Because I've heard your sentiment expressed a lot before. I would have to sort of work it into however I were to market this, because it would be like, the focus is on loss, and it's I mean, you could have the option of extending after the 12 cards are up, but then also having the like, well, here is this other recurring thing that happens, or anniversaries or something too, that you want to acknowledge, but also have trouble keeping track of. So that's a really good idea. That's like, this is a thing we always know is going to happen and can be set up.
Or if anything, it might serve as a bit of an experiment to help, like, what about pricing? Have you figured out like pricing and like how that process works, of signing up for it and selecting a card? And I think I would imagine the market of grieving is people that come and go really quick, right? Like, I'm not grieving today, and tomorrow I would be a grieving customer of this particular service, where you might get a little more feedback from people with something that recurring in their life, at least to just see how that process works, to see, is it viable? Okay, so maybe getting grieving customers is one marketing way, but you still have the same base business. And like, how does that function? Does it work well? Does it make sense to, you know, how low do you have to go? I mean, would somebody be willing to pay what? Have you thought about like how much people are willing to pay for the service, et cetera, et cetera? So just some thoughts.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Having like, that could be a way to test this, just the subscription card idea in general too. Like, this is a thing that we know always happens. Pricing is also something like, I'm like, wow, it probably goes along with the viability or the validation testing and the market testing too. Cause I mean, I've thought, yeah, that's a thing I'm going to have to decide at some point. I have not gotten there yet. So, but yeah, thank you for that. That's a really good kind of way of testing. Just like, do people even like this concept in general?
Yeah. Thanks for your presentation.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, great questions from everybody. Thank you all so much for those questions. There's a bunch more that came through the chat, so Megan will make sure we get you that. But yeah, so at this point, we always ask every entrepreneur, what can the 1 Million Cups community do for you? And this question is designed to be a conversation starter and like a launch point to reconnecting with you after this. So
Yeah.
what are your thoughts? What can we do for you?
Well, I mean, just this opportunity, first of all, was phenomenal because it helped me either refine the ideas that were kind of fuzzy floating around, or gave me ideas that I didn't have before. And then with that sort of gave me like the confidence to go try some of these things in a less sort of haphazard kind of scattered-y way, but more like, oh yeah, I'm doing this for this purpose. I'm creating this thing to, you know, market test or validation test this idea. And that gives me a little more intentionality. So in terms of like going forward, I think just having the feedback, like if and when, well, it will be when, I just don't know when, I've tried some of these things and have results or have further questions or whatever, knowing that there is a community of people who are kind of in the flails as well, would also be great. So I think just, yeah, having the thoughtful feedback is really the most important thing. Like the understanding of this is still kind of a beginning. I'm not totally sure what I'm doing.
Totally.
Yeah, having that kind of like gentle space to process and return to when I really kind of get out there.
Yeah. Well, I echo what everyone else has shared. Great presentation today. And I know I also experienced a lot of growth myself just by going through the presentation process.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you've also experienced that as well. So for everyone, what can you do for the 1 Million Cups community? Well, you can bring a friend next week. Let people know that this is a supportive place. And also apply to present. You don't need to have everything all figured out. You don't even need to be, already ready to present. We're not going to immediately put you on the calendar. And as Megan and I have both shared, even just going through the process to put your thoughts together, and that is part of the educational process of 1 Million Cups. And we have a whole process as an organizing team to help you get ready. So that could include, of course, the technical onboarding, also can include coaching if you feel like you need that. And all you have to be doing is trying something new. You're willing to ask for help, and you want to learn by putting things together. So really strongly encourage you to apply to present. That just kind of gets you in our queue, so you're on our radar, even if you think it might be a few months before you're ready to present. And then remember that we could use more support. Running a weekly event, there's a lot of different things to do, and we're really committed to making sure that this is a process that we can continue to have this supportive community while also making sure that as organizers, we are able to still be present and give everybody the energy needed. So would love to have more people join our team. So feel free to send us an email at seattle@1millioncups.com if you'd like to learn more. No requirements for commitment if you email us. So now we're going to jump out into some breakout rooms. So we're going to connect in some small groups, and we remind you to turn on your video. This is for continuing the conversations, going deeper on something. Maybe you can respond to feedback that you heard, or you could share about how some of the feedback for Megan is also feedback you want to take for yourself. So, but feel free to leave when you're full, and we'll keep the breakout rooms open until about 10:15. But thank you all for being here. Great presentation today, Megan. Great conversation, and we'll see you all next week.
Thank you so much.
Let's see. Open all rooms.